I suppose we're living in a good world when you can buy a brand new Benz for under 35 grand. That's the main draw of the CLA, the most affordable Mercedes you can buy. Since the 2014 model year, the CLA has been the fashionista among compact luxury sedans, and not just because of that giant star on the grille. I'm Clifford Attia with CarGurus, and today I'm driving the 2017 CLA 250 4MATIC. Mercedes made a few nips and tucks for the 2017 model year, but this car is not about outright performance or practicality. But before you dismiss the CLA as a car that's all style and little substance, we'll need to take a drive. Mercedes calls the CLA a four-door coupe, but of course there's no such thing. This is a sedan. But it's really designed to look like the CLS. That's the car Mercedes came out with in the mid-2000s. That's the $70,000 and up Mercedes. Looks incredible. And now you have most of that style for something that's half the price. Really, in this segment, there's nothing else that looks like it. The Audi A3 is the closest competitor, and it's more of like that three-box shaped sedan. It's kind of boring. There's a logo on the front of this thing that's about 8-9 inches wide. So beyond just that alone, the car just looks great. But everybody is knowing what you're driving at all times, and that's kind of the point of this car. Now for 2017, the CLA gets new front and rear fascias, new lights, some new wheel designs, and inside the 8-inch screen here is standard. So is forward collision alert with auto braking and a backup camera. So part of the coupe atmosphere in the CLA comes with these seats. They're one-piece buckets, and so that's a lot different than the most traditional Mercedes where you have the separate powered headrest. They even have the headrest icon here on the door, but you can't actually move it because the whole thing is fixed. But it is pretty cool because you actually have, our car has optional ambient lighting that actually glows right by my neck right here. All 4 seating positions have that. And even when you get out of the car at night, they start cycling through about 10 or more different colors. So this car is a little bit more fun. Now in Mercedes, the leather feels just like their, what they call MB Tex, which is vinyl. So it's not really, I would say, a supple feeling leather at all, but it's gonna last a long time. The brown is what's nice though, so if you want the brown interior, you gotta pay extra for that. So it really kind of dresses up this cabin a bit more than the standard car. We've got some contrast stitching going on, the aluminum. But I gotta tell you, if you're gonna rent one of these cars, my parents just rented a CLA in Arizona, for example, and that thing had nothing on it. It was like just bare bones inside. Manual passenger seat, you know, the halogen headlamps, so it doesn't look nearly as spiffy as this car here, which is about $50,000. We have almost all the options inside. But it just goes to show you that if you can spend the money, you can have this car looking pretty fresh inside here. It really is pretty good. There's only 13.1 cubic feet of trunk space, and the rear seats do fold down. I had some sheetrock in the back recently. So it's enough for that, but you're not gonna get much more room. So like most new cars these days, there's no shortage of driver assistance systems. Now a few of them are actually standard on a Mercedes. I know that's a hard thing to think about, but Mercedes does make them standard for no extra cost. One of those is attention assist, and that was debuted with the E-Class a few years ago. That basically monitors your driving habits, your steering movements, and it sounds an alarm when it thinks you're fatigued to suggest that you stop and take a rest. Now the 2017 CLA also comes with forward collision alert with auto braking, and that's very useful. We're driving past some people now with Greyhounds, and if I wasn't paying attention, supposedly the car would stop. But like every driver assistance system out there, you can't trust it completely. These are not full autonomous cars, but they come in handy. We have blind spot assist as well, and of course stability control, all of that stuff. So it's quite nice. We also have, in this vehicle, lane keep assist. It'll vibrate the steering wheel if I'm veering out of the lane and also correct it. I'm not a fan of this tacked on screen. I think it looks like an aftermarket unit. It looks like, you know, you could just rip it right off the dash. It looks like it's a touchscreen, but it's not. All those things. But Mercedes has done it, Audi's doing it, BMW, Lexus. You can find this in any car. I don't like that they're not integrated into the dash. I think overall, too, over the years, it's going to cause some more vibrations. I've noticed that in some other cars. But be that as it may, the screen is really high resolution, and it's pretty easy to use. Command system here with this central dial here basically gets you to everything you have on here, but it's not the most intuitive system at all. But you have voice recognition, you got navigation with 3 years of included updates, traffic, Wi-Fi, apps, all this telematic stuff that lets you remotely unlock the car, all of that good stuff. So it's really up to date with all the features you could ever really want. It's fully loaded in that respect. The Harman Kardon stereo in our car sounds great. It has surround sound and also lets you pull in things like video and other stuff that you can even save from a disc or USB. Now the price you pay in the CLA for all those good looks is the back seat, or rather your passengers in the back seat will pay for it, because if they're over 5'9", their heads are going to be hitting the roof. I know, I don't like being back there. The last time I drove this car, the only rear passenger I had was my dog, and I know he was comfortable, but I didn't want to put anyone else in the back for that reason. But at the same time, the sightlines on this car are actually good, despite on the outside what look like very thick pillars and a thin section of glass versus the body. It's actually easy to see out of. So even though you have this nice backup camera, you don't really need it as much as you might think. Under the hood is a 4-cylinder engine. This car, it makes a lot of sense to have a 4-cylinder engine as opposed to cars like the E-Class or bigger Mercedes models where they're putting that in to save cost and have lower emissions ratings. But this car is already small and light enough that 4 is really all you need. 2-liter turbocharged, 208 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque. It's a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic. Now that acts more like a traditional manual in a lot of ways. It's not a traditional automatic. So as a result, it doesn't feel as smooth to drive all the time, but it also ends up shifting a little quicker. So that's different than in a lot of other Mercedes models. The only other cars that include that transmission are the GLA, that little crossover, and some of the AMG high-performance models. Now, if you step up to that AMG version of this car, the CLA-45, you get the similar engine, but there's 26 PSI. That's 26 pounds per square inch of turbo boost. That's the most of any production 4-cylinder engine out there right now. 375 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. And that's only routed through 4MATIC all-wheel drive. And that car is a real hoot to drive. And it actually starts at the same price that our loaded CLA 250 is right now. So if you're getting up to 50 grand with this car, you might want to ask yourself if you want that extra power. I would say try it. CLA is rated in front-wheel drive trim at 24 miles per gallon in the city and 36 on the highway. Now the 4MATIC trim we have now lowers that a bit, 23 city, 32 highway. I've been averaging about roughly 28 miles to the gallon, a lot on highway, mixture of city. That's okay. I would expect it a lot better for a car this size, but that being said, I do like the 4-cylinder. It works, it's pretty torquey. There's a little bit less power than it is in the C-Class, but it's not really quite noticeable. Where it really kind of is an issue is really more of the groaning under acceleration. A lot more noise comes into the cabin, tire noise, wind noise, and so there's a lot, it's not as sealed as some of the other Mercedes models, but the performance is pretty adequate. The transmission too is also not as smooth, so sometimes when I'm rolling to a stop, you'll hear the transmission clunk into a lower gear. It's from a takeoff, it's also not as smooth. It tends to just be a little jumpier, almost as if you were shifting it yourself. But that's the whole thing with the dual clutch transmission. It acts physically different than a regular automatic because there's no torque converter. And the torque converter is what really keeps that super smooth launches that everyone is used to when they're driving an automatic. The paddle shifters on the steering wheel are a little bit quicker to respond than some other models I've tested. And again, credit to that transmission. So if you really want luxury, you're gonna notice that there's a few things missing with the CLA. But if you don't mind a harder ride and a bit more noise in the cabin, then it's fine. Now handling wise, the CLA is really nice. The steering electrically assisted. There's some decent feedback going on. There's hardly any body roll. Now our car has the adaptive suspension. That's an $850 option. I don't think you really need that because the car is already very stiff as it is. We got run flat tires on here. They're 18-inch, low profile. So you don't really need to have harder suspension on what's already a hard suspension tune. But the benefit of that, of course, is that it really handles flat and it's very predictable. There's a lot of grip. So it's really fun to chuck this car in its corners. And again, that's not something you would have said about a Mercedes-Benz especially in the small segment 5-6 years ago, but you can definitely say that now. Braking is also another strong point in this car. And really, what it boils down to, it's like you definitely feel like this is a German car. And those cars, they're just engineered to track straight and true. All the controls really have a very firm, consistent feel about them, and you have a lot of confidence, so that's really a good thing. So standard on the CLA is a feature called Dynamic Select. That lets you alter the throttle, the transmission settings, the steering weighting, on our car, the adaptive suspension, from several different modes. And one of them, of course, is individual, and you can set your own mode and save it each time, and that helps. So every time you start the car, if you say want a softer suspension, but you want a stiffer steering, you can just flick that button and get exactly the driving style you want. The prices for the CLA start at just over $33,000. Now that's for a base model front-wheel drive. And if you just tick a few more boxes, like for the LED headlamps, panoramic moonroof, and all the other features we have in this car, now we're over $50,000. That's one of the most expensive ways to outfit this car. Most of the vehicles on the lot you'll see are probably going to be in the $40,000 range. And if you get that AMG version, now you're cresting $55,000, even $60,000. Now the Audi A3 has a lot more standard features in it for less money. So there's a lot more value if you're going for that. But again, if you're going for that style, Mercedes is hoping you'll pay the premium for it. Real estate agents talk location, location, location. The Mercedes CLA is all looks, and more good looks. Plus it's a pretty good value and lightly optioned. It's also a reminder that you didn't buy the more expensive Benz, the C-Class, because underneath this pretty skin, the CLA sheds some refinement and comfort for that low starting price. But it handles well, packs plenty of technology, and still retains that same tank-like solid construction Mercedes is known for. For more details, check out my full review on CarGurus.com, and be sure to subscribe to our CarGurus YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.